As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. And speaking of All Pro Dads, I'm here with just slightly above average dads, including myself.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so, we don't think we're the pros at all. We're not pros, but we're trying, guys, right?
Yeah,
we're trying, just like the guys that are listening. We're all trying together. Every episode, we take a look at just one question, because that's all we can handle.
Yep.
Just one question, and then at the end, we want to give you just one pro move, which sounds bigger than it is. It's just one simple thing, but we think it's powerful too. Powerful thing to do as a dad. So our question of the day, Buck, what is our question of the day?
Our question of the day is, how do we help our kids realistically believe in themselves?
What about you guys? When you were little and you thought, I want to be this. What was that thing that you wanted to be growing up? Do you remember that? Did you have anything, were you the classic fireman or astronaut?
I'm going to guess, but you wanted to be like rock and roll star, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
I knew it.
There was my desires were more in the arts, in general. Like my dad he's a drummer. Played in 70s rock bands and all that fun stuff. Got great pictures of him with just like hair. He's bald like me now, but just
so a rock star.
Yeah, a rock star. But then also I was really into drawing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do this.
But I was also really into drawing cars. So I didn't know what to do, but I loved custom cars. I loved drawing and art, and I loved music.
I love that. So, BJ, what about you?
I was your classic professional baseball player.
Oh, me too.
That was kind of mine. Bobby probably got closer to that than I did, but
I remember when I was a high school summer camp counselor. We grew up in the Tampa Bay area, and the Tampa Bay Devil Rays were a new franchise. And I remember going to Tropicana Field, a big dome. It's an indoor stadium, and they let us go on the field with all the kids. It was like summer camp day or whatever. And I remember going out there, and I bent down in the dirt by shortstop, and with my finger I wrote, "I'll be back." And some guy who does the field crew, he's like, "Get out of here. You can't touch the dirt." I'm like, "Sorry, but I already wrote it." And they kicked us out.
I'm going to be your boss someday.
Yeah.
All right.
It didn't work out. I didn't play for them.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
What did you write? That's a good question. What did you write in the sand? I'll be back.
I'll be back.
My I will be back was, you guys are going to throw things at me. I wanted to be a crop duster because my dad's a farmer. And so these crop dusters they really did risk their lives. The life expectancy of a crop duster wasn't good. They don't do that as much anymore. But I'd stand outside. That's probably what's wrong with me and get sprayed with pesticides. Yeah. But this guy would go over our house, and it looked like death every time. And I thought, I'm in. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
So I have never heard anyone say, I wanted to be a crop duster in my life.
But it expanded, though, in high school that I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. That was a whole thing. Cool. For you guys with your dads, did they have a lot of influence, or did they have a desire for you to go in a certain direction?
I'd say musically, my dad was a huge influence. And there was never really a moment where it was a no. Or why don't you try something else, Sure. So my dad was always encouraging in that way of, his encouragement came from kind of stepping out of the way and letting me have the opportunity to do it,
Gotcha.
and to get at it. So he never really tried to steer me in any direction.
Okay.
I don't think so.
BJ, what about you?
No, my dad did to do whatever you want. And it was interesting when I would play sports, he was one of those dads, he would sit on the sidelines and never say anything. It was never yell at me, never cheer.
Right.
It was like, I'm going to give you the space to do your thing.
Right.
And he wasn't unencouraging. He was encouraging. After the game, he'd be like, "That was great. You were amazing."
But he didn't have a high need for you to be in one direction or the other.
No.
Bobby, what about you?
My dad pushed me to be a ballerina. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a story.
No, they didn't push me to be anything. It was just, hey, what makes you happy? Go for it.
Yep. My dad didn't either. I think he just didn't want my brother and I mean, he's a fifth generation farmer. I think he didn't want that for us, and so he would give us the worst jobs ever to ensure that, and it worked, friends.
Your dad is like, oh, those crop dusters. Gosh.
It did work. It did work. Okay, but you hear of so many dads telling their kids or thinking their kids or pushing their kids. I mean, we've all been there. Maybe somebody's listening going, ooh, I'm kind of that dad, where they're just on their kids all the time. Like, I want you to achieve. I mean, I think the stereotypical thing that we see, because it's more out on display, is with sports. Bobby, you have some stats on how dads do this.
Yeah, and I'm noticing this now as a dad of a son who plays sports. My middle child, he loves hockey, loves ice hockey. When the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago, he watched it on TV, and he's like, I want to do that. I'm like, buddy, you can't skate. Like, you can't do that. You got to learn how to skate. So he learned. He grew his hair out. Like, he's all in, man. We got like dents in the garage.
Beard.
Well, not the beard yet. Yeah, we're getting there. But he's like all in. And so I'll go watch these hockey games, and it's a very clear divide. There's parents who are there because the kids like this, and it's air conditioned. We're going to hang out inside. It's hot outside in the summer. And there's parents who are like, my kid will be Wayne Gretzky Jr. And like, it's going to happen.
You've got stats.
I do.
Yep.
I looked it up. This was astounding to me that 27% of sports parents spend $500 or more per month on their kids' sports.
Wait, say that one more time.
27% of parents spend $500 or more per month on youth sports.
Wow.
That blew my mind. It's like $500 in a year, maybe a month. $500 a month. That's a big percentage to me. And this is even more shocking. This is from a Harris poll in 2019. More than 40% of dads expect their child to play as a professional athlete in some sport.
40%.
2 out of 5 dads in the stands think their kid's going to play professionally.
Okay, so if I have that expectation as a dad, if 40%,
what pressure on a kid, right?
Yeah, what is that? What do you guys see that looking like when you see dads pushing their kids on display?
When I've seen it, I just see a lot of anger.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it's just a lot of, I think, internal frustration with them. I don't want to say with them, like, I don't want to like belittle them in any way. They're processing it different than I would, because I don't think that way, and I don't necessarily do that, but yeah, I think
so. It's anger, and then the kid's the recipient of that anger because you're not living up to this expectation. And if you're not doing any better than this right now, then you're never going to make it.
Parents who believe the kids are going to be professional athletes, you know, that's for them to sort through. But if the kid believes they're going to be a professional athlete, how do we then redirect them towards something that's a little more realistic? Because less than 1% of these kids are ever going to, for one, get a college scholarship, and then 1% of the college scholarship kids are going to play professionally. I mean, it's just such a small slice of the pie. And for the kids who think, I'm going to be back, I wrote my name in the dirt, like, how do you realistically talk to that kid and say, have your best effort to get there, but it may or may not happen? How do you support a kid through that?
I think that's the thing. When you get super intense on a kid who's out on the field or anything, whether they're doing dancing or whether they're doing, the music or whatever, if you're super intense on them, then the ability to fail, like the permission to fail, is non-existent. So they feel all this pressure, and they're like, well, I can't fail at all. And I don't think anybody who's ever going to make it professionally or believe in themselves, if they don't feel like it's okay to fail, then they're not going to risk. They're going to feel fear. They're going to, and then there's going to be this building resentment, towards the pressure that's being put on them. They're more likely to crack and so when I see dads that are super intense on their kids, I fast forward and I just see broken relationship by the time they're into their teenage years.
Because I wonder what percent of the 40% who believe their kids are going to be professional athletes. I wonder what percentage of them are coaches. I'll never forget. I remember standing there in Little League field, and we're leaning over the fence with this other dad, and this coach is just going off on his kid, and the dad leans over and kind of says under his breath, he goes, the way I figure it, my kid's going to make his living like everybody else. Because he was acting as if, that kid's dad was acting as if he wasn't.
Well, I think that's one of the hugest problems is we have an adult agenda. We're not thinking about the kid. We're thinking about what we want to see happen. And the kids are able to pick up on that. And they're like, okay, if my dad has an agenda for me, and that's his agenda, he's not thinking about me at all. He's thinking about what he wants to have happen. There's broken trust there, and they can't. Yeah. They're like, my dad is a person I can't trust because he's about himself and he's about what he wants.
I have made a very conscious decision that after every one of my son's hockey games, whether he scored 8 goals or fell down 8 times, doesn't matter. Afterwards, the first question that I ask is, did you have fun? Because I don't care if he scored. I mean, it's great if he scores 8 goals, but you know, what's the end result here? You had a good individual performance in a game. Like, good for you. Like, if he didn't enjoy it, the 8 goals don't matter.
Right.
You know, I want him to enjoy the sport. I want him to enjoy what he's doing. Same thing with my daughter who plays piano. Like, are you still enjoying piano? Because if you're not, we can talk about trying something new. Or my little one is wanting to do ballet now. We're going to get her the ballet slippers and all that, and she's going to do her ballet class. But if a year from now she's like, I don't really like it anymore, I'm like, well, let's find something else you like. You know, let's do something that's fun. And when we heap these like expectations on them that like you're going to be on Broadway one day, 4-year-old, like that's a little bit harsh to do to a child who right now they're just living in the moment. They're not thinking 20 years down the line. They're thinking about 20 minutes from now, I'm going to do my activity, and then where's the snacks? You know, like that's what they're thinking.
And they've got the rest of their lives to feel the pressure of trying to be professionals. I mean, don't we all end up being professionals? We've got a buddy, I just think he's a great dad. He's about 10 years down the road from us. And he says what he would always say to his kids after watching them play sports was, man, I really love watching you play.
Yeah.
I really love watching you play. And I said, and he was a coach. Like he was a coach of his kids. And I said, when do you coach him? He goes, well, you never coach a mistake following the game. Immediately he goes, you talk about that right before the next game, but you do not. They're too emotional. You know, they're in the emotional part of their brain. They're hearing the logic of you should have done X, Y, Z. And so I've always thought that's great. Like coach them up right before, but right after, boy, it's fun watching you play. Yeah, Bobby, I think that's great. Did you have fun? Because most of them, it sounds like 99% of them, better be enjoying it because they're going to have to make their living like everybody else, right? Yeah. Do you guys think we live vicariously through our kids? Do you think, like, what's the motivation behind 40% of dads thinking my kid's going to be a professional athlete? Like, why are they doing that? Like, what's the motivation behind that?
I know, I mean, both of us said it earlier. We wanted to be professional baseball players, and it didn't happen. So, like, that dream that died a little bit because we just didn't ascend to that level, are like, maybe they can get it, you know? Because I just wanted that to happen so much because I enjoyed the sport of baseball so much. So, if someone else can achieve that dream and I can see my son smile or my daughter smile by achieving something, that'd be awesome. You know, that's, I think, the motivation, at least for me. I don't know if that's the way that you guys think, but I just think dads want the best for their kids, and sometimes we just get a little extreme with that.
Right.
Yeah, I think it comes from a desire to see our kids maybe even be more successful than we were or than we are, you know. But what that can turn into is more of a negative connotation of that would spiral into disappointment because the statistics are so skewed that like not many people are going to make it. But I think I think a lot of it is coming from, you know, because a dad did not aspire to be a professional softball player, but he is trying to live that through his daughter because that's something that she loves doing, and she had maybe even a natural bent to do it. But then it's almost like something clicks in all guys of like, okay, they're into it. I'm invested in it. I've put a lot of money into this.
$500 a month, baby.
Well, I got
$500 on the line here, kid. Come on.
Well, it's easy to talk about this in the sports realm because that's just a very forward-facing thing. We see sports on TV. But there's other things that kids are going to want to achieve that we can look at it from the outsider's perspective and be like, probably not going to happen. You don't like math? You're probably not going to work for NASA. You know, like you don't like science? You're probably not going to be a surgeon. Like there's other things that like kids might want, but realistically, we can look at them as a parent and be like, I don't see that for you based on all the characteristics that you're displaying right now. So if there are 12 people have walked on the moon, right? So BJ, if your daughter comes to you and says, I want to be an astronaut, what would you say to her saying in the history of humanity, 12 people have done what you're attempting to do. What would you tell her? And be a good dad in the process.
Try to be a professional athlete. The odds
Yeah,
are
do
better.
that instead. The odds are way better.
Probably wouldn't tell her that.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Right.
So, but I don't know. I don't know what I would tell her. I would probably tell her, give it a shot, go for it, and see what happens. It is a low percentage, but go for it. Going back to your question, Ted, I hindsight's 2020. We look back on our own lives and we see the mistakes that we made and the pain in it that we had to live through. Mm-hmm. And I know that for my kids, like, I just want to, like, I sort of see myself in them, and I'm like, I don't want them to make the same mistakes I made and experience the same kind of pain. So I'm like trying to fix my past mistakes through them. Yeah. And instead of thinking about them as completely different people on a completely different journey and a completely different life. Right. Yeah. And so it's like, I start to micromanage. And then I feel like I need to pour into, like, I need to give them every ounce of wisdom that I earned so that they avoid all the suffering and the pain. And like Buck said, it's really fun to see them succeed.
Some of this does come from a good place. Some of this is not living vicariously through our kids. We want good things for our kids. We want our kids to be more successful, more happy, more peaceful. That's why people are listening to this.
And some kids have a natural bent to be competitive or to do that stuff. And so, like, a lot of it is probably dad just saying, like, I want to help feed my kid and give him the moments where they can be competitive or they can kind of hit that outlet for themselves.
So how do we do this right? My wife would always say, I don't want to be an American Idol parent, because sometimes you would watch American Idol auditions and the mom's standing in the wings and some guy cannot sing, and she's like, he's been able to sing in the womb. And she's like, I'm never going to do that. So what's the right way? If we're feeling like, hey, I don't putting too much pressure, screaming at games, always talking about grades, being on them about their homework. Mm-hmm. They're not great at math. You want to make them great at math. Like, that's kind of, we've talked about. What's the right way, do you guys feel like, to do this? How do we encourage them, yet not unrealistically? I think life's going to teach them what they're good at or not. They don't need us to go, hey, you're never going to be an astronaut, because life's going to tell them.
I try to teach my kids to always be learners in everything that we do, because you never know what you're going to learn doing something that you're not going to do for the rest of your life or professionally or whatever, but you learn something from that experience that you take to the next one. And so I tell them to always be learning. And then I always just encourage, and I personally try to find, even if it's something that they're really not good at, I know that as a parent, I need to try and find what are they doing well at that, and encourage them in that way. And then let that be kind of like the focal point of my encouragement to them, is like, good. What are they doing well?
Like, you're persisting, you're you're persisting on this.
Yeah.
What do you think, BJ?
I mean, I think one of the things that we can do is find the truthful things that the attributes are them that are positive, and really bring those out, and not add a but on top or anything. Yeah. But you could work on this a little bit more, like just leaving it as that kind of one thing. I do like that. I love the thing you said, Ted, about we need to be honest with it. Like, life is going to tell them what they're good at, but I think we can stay away from tropes like, boy, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. Like, all those things.
You could have been in the NBA, BJ.
No,
you could have.
I guarantee
you just had to think harder.
I could not have.
Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself. But that gets communicated, though, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. And I've written about that before, and people are like, "Oh boy, this guy's a real curmudgeon." No, I'm not out there telling my kids they're going to fail, but I'm not also building them up falsely. Like, we need to build them up with honesty. So finding the things. My dad, I'll never forget. It's the greatest thing he ever said to me was, he said, "Boy, you get faced with adversity, and you just keep trucking along. You just keep pushing through it. You really are able to overcome a lot. It's pretty amazing to me." And he left it at that. And I was in my teens when he said that. Now, he missed all the therapy I had to take when I was in my 30s. But that to me really built me up. Like, oh gosh, my dad notices that when I'm faced with trials that I push through. I try to push through, and that's something that stayed with me when I faced trials.
So it was a character thing.
Yeah, it was a character thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and just put a period on your encouragement. Like encourage, period.
Oh, that's
You know,
because we're fixers, right?
because like what you were saying is
Yeah.
like a lot of times we encourage them to say, "But work on this," or no, just
That's
put a
good.
period.
Just put a period.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think realistically, we're trying to get kids to understand what's achievable, and I want them to pursue everything. But I think more than anything else, as they're figuring out what life is going to look like for them, I want to stress the importance of process over results. Because if we get so oriented on results and the finish line, you miss all the lessons in getting there.
Yeah.
And so I think if we can stress like, hey, do your best. Shoot for your dream. You want to be an astronaut? Study, study, study. Get all the math, all the science, do everything you can. And you know what? If you don't step on the moon, you gave it 100%.
That's good.
And that's enough. You try. I mean, not everybody is going to be the 1% of the 1% who wins Wimbledon. Like it's just not going to happen statistically. But that doesn't mean that throughout the entire process, you didn't learn to be a better person. You didn't learn to overcome adversity. You learn all these skills that you can apply to every other factor of life, like being a parent or a father. You can apply all these lessons that you've learned in the process, even if you didn't hit the finish line the way you exactly wanted to.
Oh, that's so good. One of the things that I've started writing a few articles for All Pro Dad is I've gone to my 20-year-old, my 23-year-old, and just asked them questions. And so they're not words, guys. Like, especially my middle son, I wrote him this really heartfelt birthday message text, and I'd give anything to have my dad send to me, and his response was, "Gross, Dad." All right, thank you, thank you. But he doesn't like all that emotion coming out. And I have my two sons. I've got one of them. He can lose a game and come out the champ, and then I've got one. He can win the game for them and still figure out like he didn't do well. He, on his driver's test, my second son, he backed over some cones, like right at the gate. Like he was out there like 5 minutes and comes back in and tears are coming down his eyes. I've never been more heartbroken for him in my life. And so we go get in the car and this lady walks up to him and knocks on the window. She goes, "Listen, we've got somebody from state here. So they're being, a little bit tougher on kids today. Don't worry about this as much. Typically we'd just let you do X, Y, Z." And we're driving away. I said, "Does that make you feel better?" And he goes, "No, Dad, I ran over cones." And so there is no affirmation for
Those cones are dead.
Those cones are dead. Flat. And I texted him the other day. I said, "Hey, we're writing a thing on, about words, the power of words. Do you ever remember any words that mattered to you that I said to you?" And he comes back. He goes, "I remember when I missed the extra point in 7th grade, you were there for me." And so I couldn't let that lie and say thanks. I had to go back. Well, do you remember what I said and what I did?
No.
Ghosted me. So, but it is
He
one
responded with gross.
gross, Dad.
Gross.
Stop. You don't know how much on a limb I went for that. So I think what we're seeing, because we always want to give a little bit of bottom line, and I think what we're hearing is encourage your kids' character and not their performance. Because if we encourage their character, and they are going to be the professional athlete or the astronaut, this character is going to get them there. And still, if we encourage that character, they're going to feel loved. I mean, BJ, I remember the most important thing my dad ever said to me was not "you're the best fill in the blank of all time," but you've got persistence.
I love that character part too. It made me think of a time not too long ago when my son was playing a hockey game. And I was so impressed. They're little. They bang into each other a lot. They're not super great skaters yet. But there was a moment in the game where he ran into another player, and my son held onto his stick, but the other player's stick went, flying away, 10 feet away. The puck popped right in front of my son. He could have grabbed the puck, turned, shot, and scored a goal. But instead, he skated over and got the stick of the other teammate and slid the stick back over to her, and then went after the puck. And I was like, man. That was what I praised him for after the game. I said, "You scored 85 goals, whatever. I don't care about that. You did something kind for someone else." I don't see that happening in an NHL game, but I do think that would be cool for Little League hockey. Like he prioritized someone else, and that's a character forming moment, and that's what I think we should be praising, not so much, "Hey, did you win the game?"
That's a great place for us to land this thing, Bobby. That's what we're talking about here. It's praising their character. So, Buck, each week, as you know.
Yeah.
We give the pro move of the episode. It's something that It's doable for dads who live in the real world, but can make a difference. What is our pro move of this episode?
Pro move of this episode is in the next 24 hours. Encourage your kid or kids by telling them one thing you love and respect about their character.
Nice.
That'd be kind of cool. And it doesn't have to be big because you're going to get gross, Dad.
Yeah.
Gross, Dad.
But it is those things, encourage their characters. You guys, thank you. I always learn from you guys. Thank you. And thank you guys who are listening. And we hope this encourages you to continue to be an all-pro dad. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.